3, 2, 1.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. It's Jason with PCC. Hope you guys are having an amazing Friday. Hope you guys had an awesome week. We have a Bible study for today. This one is Waiting Patiently for God's Promise. This is the third section of the study of a total of 5. So we'll have this one and 2 more. It's going to basically cover David in the cave while he's in exile from King Saul. But before we kind of dig into that, I just wanted to let you guys know that right now we have Lifeline screening here on campus. They're doing health screenings of all sorts. I'll put a link to their website. And but if you guys know the campus, our address is 800 West Arrow Highway, Upland, California, 91786. It's in our gymnasium, and I'll put our address here up on the screen, and I'll include the link to Lifeline in the comment section below. And yeah, so let's go ahead and just dig into the Bible study. So this is going to cover 1 Samuel 24, 1 through 13. That's the basis of the story, and then we'll kind of go in from there. So let's go ahead and dig into the Bible here. This is David spares Saul's life. After Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told David is in the desert of En-Gedi. So Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. He came to the sheep pens. Along the way, a cave was there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. David and his men were far back in the cave. The men said, "This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish." Then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Afterward, David was conscience-stricken for having cut off a corner of his robe. He said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lift my hand against him, for he is the anointed of the Lord." With these words, David rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went his way. Then David went out of the cave and called out to Saul, "My lord the king." When Saul looked behind him, David bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. He said to Saul, "Why do you listen when men say, 'David is bent on harming you'? This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lift my hand against my master, because he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but did not kill you. Now, understand and recognize that I am not guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me, but my hand will not touch you. As the old saying goes, from evildoers come evil deeds, so my hand will not touch you." And then, like I said, I'm resourcing this from Quest Study Bible. It's the one we've been digging into for a number of months here. And then here it has 2 little snippets, just dig in a little bit further to the word here. It says, "Why did David feel so guilty about merely cutting off a corner of Saul's robe? In the days of Saul and David, to seize the hem of a garment symbolized loyalty, faith, and covenant making. Cutting off the corner of someone's robe was a symbol of disloyalty and rebellion. David's act was a display of disloyalty towards Saul, something he had continually and carefully guarded against." And then also goes in here to say, if David regretted cutting Saul's robe, why flaunt it? Cutting Saul's robe was a sign of rebellion against Saul's authority. Moved by his conscience, David bowed to Saul and showed the corner he cut from Saul's robe in order to prove his loyalty. That's kind of how I've always looked at it. Okay, so now that we kind of dug into the word a little bit, we will kind of go over the synapse of the video that you're going to see here in just a minute. And then we'll watch it. So waiting patiently can be a hard thing to do. Our world of busy, buy instantly online and it's at your door in 2 days has eroded our ability to be long, suffering, and wait for good things. One of the things we learn about David was his patience when it came to waiting for God's plan to unfold. David was still a young man, a shepherd boy, when Samuel came and anointed him the future king of Israel. Still, Saul was the reigning king, and even though God had left him, he was the man in charge in the kingdom. David knew this and respected this fact. Imagine being elected the next president of the United States, but there's still someone different sitting in the Oval Office. How difficult do you think it would be to sit patiently and wait for your turn to govern, especially if you don't agree with the sitting president's policies and ideology? To some extent, that was David's situation. He knew the nation would be his to lead eventually in God's time. Now, imagine you're the president-elect and the current president is determined to have you killed because of intense jealousy because of your popularity. Sounds like a political thriller, if you've ever heard of one. This was David's situation throughout the second half of the book of 1 Samuel. Saul spends years obsessing over trying to kill David. He chases him to the ends of the nation. David is forced to hide out in caves and in the wilderness. On a couple of occasions, David even has an opportunity to kill Saul and doesn't take the advantage. He has the chance to finally take his rightful place on the throne and end all the stress of running for his life, and David chooses not to take the king's life. Why would someone do that? Because David respected Saul's position and God's plan. It wasn't God's plan for David to murder the ruling king. When the time comes and David gets word of Saul's death in battle, instead of throwing a big "I'm finally king" celebration, what does he do? David mourns the death of Saul and his son Jonathan, who happened to be David's best friend. Talk about respect. Today we can often look at a life and say, when is God going to do, what is God going to give? When is he going to give this to me? How long do I have to wait for this to happen? Or I'm tired of waiting on God. I'm going to jump in the driver's seat and take control of this situation. These attitudes show our lack of faith in God's plan and his all-knowing omnipresence. We need to be willing to wait patiently and respect God's plan for our lives, even if it means hiding out in a dark cave. This last paragraph really spoke to me because, as you know, my wife and I, we are the directors of the campus here. We have a lot of different ministries going on, sometimes all at once. And when there's challenges or this or that, you kind of go in there and you start kind of, quick firing off ways to, solve this problem, all's good. And sometimes it just seems like it's just extra hard. It just seems extra hard. It's harder than it needs to be. And then when we, have that moment and we kind of really sit down and we kind of, pray about something or think about it and really let him lead it, it's amazing just how much smoother and more effective and just how everything kind of just aligned so naturally. And it's really, really cool to see. It's one of my favorite things to see since we've been here. So on that note, I will let you guys go, and you guys can watch that video, and the video will also be in the link below. So see you guys back here in a second.
Again, Barry has taken us to a place that the Bible describes David going to during Saul's pursuit of him, and it's not some random place. It makes sense that he went there, and it makes sense why he went there. It's a real place, and you can walk up that canyon yourself. It was at En-Gedi that Saul heard David was there. He brings his troops down, and he needs to take care of some business. Goes into a cave. It just happens to be the cave where David and his men are hiding. He had the peer pressure of his soldiers saying, God has given you a moment. God has provided an opportunity for you to eliminate the opposition. And David goes as far as to cut the king's robe, just the corner of it. And then guilt overcomes him, and he goes out after Saul leaves the cave to let him know, look, your life was in my hands. I could have removed you if I wanted to. For 10 years, David was on the run, trying to keep from being killed by Saul. And it would have been so tempting to cut all of that short by eliminating him in that cave.
He knew this was his opportunity to get back at Saul. But I appreciate David's attitude in the whole thing. Through all of this, he recognized that Saul was the king. He was the king chosen by God. David was a man after God's own heart. He had honor for the king, even though he was in the situation that he was in.
Hello and welcome back, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed that study, that video. Just wasn't it a beautiful area just to kind of go sit down, relax, and just detox from all the challenges of the world. I can definitely see David doing that. Are you somebody like me that will kind of, to get kind of recharged or reset, or just be able to sit down and just kind of refocus, find areas like that? My wife and I would do that often, especially when COVID was kind of in the heyday of COVID. We would get a lunch and just go up and just sit and relax by the rocks where the water's coming down. It's nice and cool, nice breeze. You got the birds going, you got the wind coming through the trees, and it's just a nice place to just kind of relax, recharge, and just kind of focus in on, what life should be, or what it should look like, where you're going to go next, instead of having it where you're trying to do all those things with everything still kind of coming in. So definitely can see David doing that. I can see him being very close with the Lord there and really keeping him grounded. But to kind of dig into the actual Bible verse, I have two things that kind of really drew my mind. One was the fact there was 3,000 men to kill one person. So Saul took 3,000 men to kill one person. And I'm sure David had some followers and some people that were kind of really loyal to him. But I couldn't imagine him having 3,000 easily to just obtain and be able to go to battle with these 3,000 men that Saul had. It just really shows you how bent Saul was on killing David. And then maybe a little trivial, but something that I kind of thought was kind of cool was just the fact that it says it basically says there's an old saying, and it's in the Bible, which if you have teenage kids and you go to say something and they're like, "Oh, Dad, that's so, I don't know, last year, so yesterday," or just the words that we just don't use anymore, the sayings that we don't say anymore. And I just thought it was really cool that David has one in here. It says, as the old saying goes, from evildoers come evil deeds, so my hand will not touch you. So, and I'm sure that has some spin-off words or sayings that we use now, but it just really kind of shows you really, when the Bible uses words and phrases from even older. So it's just really kind of cool perspective. And then kind of the main question that's been kind of the focal point here is, why did David not kill Saul? So why did he not kill Saul in the cave? I totally agree with kind of everything that they're saying on that the Lord didn't want him to do that. He felt guilty. There's a lot of things that was kind of saying there, but something else kind of came to my mind was the fact that I've been a teacher, I've been a case manager, and some of the best ways to get your students of all ages, whether it's to learn something, to have certain actions, was always to replicate those. So do them to yourselves so that you're setting a good example. And I think David really had, maybe he knew he was doing this, or maybe he didn't, maybe he was mindful, maybe it wasn't, but if you're like me, again, you love history, and then you look at a lot of these dynasties of kings, and just how toxic it could be when you had one king in, and so someone else was jealous of that person got killed, so then this person's in, and you're looking at sometimes like 5, 10, half a generation of you have multiple kings, because they just kind of started just killing each other to have this power. And I think David really set a really cool example here by not making that a cycle. By doing that, he set an example for the people that were going to follow him, when they're going to see his actions and the way that he did things, and he didn't set this just start killing kings mindset. So I don't know if it was necessarily mindful that he was doing that, but he had a long reign, his son had a long reign, and I think maybe this had something to do with it. It was the fact that yes, he was following the Lord, and I'm sure the Lord had this all wrapped up in a nice little bow in why he was doing the things that he was doing at the time. But I just, all of a sudden, I love it when I'm reading a story or a verse or whatnot, and when I kind of get a different perspective from it, that is some of the best ways that I learn and grow in my Bible study. So I hope you guys enjoyed that today. We'll have another one for you guys next week. But until then, God bless, and remember to unlock that cage, everyone. Bye.